Hi, I'm Amy. This is House of Nash Eats, and today we are making homemade cinnamon rolls. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do to make our cinnamon roll dough is we're going to start by proofing our yeast. So I'm using active dry yeast, and I've got 2/3 of a cup of warm water. And I just get this out of my tap. It should be about 100 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I'm going to add 1 to 2 teaspoons of my sugar. So I've got 1/3 of a cup of sugar, and I'm just using part of it. You don't need to measure because it's all going to the same place eventually. And then we've got a tablespoon of active dry yeast. And we'll just sprinkle those together and then give them a little stir. And then we're going to wait for 5 minutes, and that warm water is going to wake up the yeast, which will feed on the sugar, and it will rise and get foamy and like bubbly, and you'll see that in just a few minutes. So once our yeast is nice and foamy, we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. And we're gonna start with eggs. So I've got 2 room temperature eggs. And the reason I like to use room temperature eggs when making this dough, and for a lot of baking, is that it's not going to bring down the temperature of the dough, which you've got the nice warm water, the yeast is really happy and it's like warm bath. And we don't wanna cool that off by adding cold eggs straight from the fridge. And we're just going to whisk those together and then add that to our yeast, which you can see is nice and foamy and bubbly and happy. And then we've got some buttermilk, which again, I pulled this out earlier, so it's room temperature. That's 1/2 cup of buttermilk. And I'll leave a printable recipe below, a link to the recipe that you can print out to follow along. We've got the rest of our sugar. It's just granulated sugar, melted butter. This is 1/4 of a cup of salted butter. I use salted butter in almost all of my baking. I don't really find a big difference between salted and unsalted butter, except for when I put it on my toast. And if you've ever put unsalted butter on your toast, it's no good. Okay, and then we've got 1 teaspoon of salt. If you're really worried about the salt and you're using unsalted butter, just add another 1/4 teaspoon of salt for each 1/2 cup of butter. And then we're going to add about 1 cup of bread flour. So I've got 4.5 cups that I already measured in here, and I'm just gonna do about 1 cup, and we're going to blend that together using our mixer. So I've got the dough hook and the paddle attachment, and we're gonna start out with the paddle attachment because it does a better job of getting these two combined together. We're just going to mix this up until it's kind of combined, and then we'll add another cup of the flour until it's nice and smooth. And it's going to be kind of lumpy, and that's totally fine. We're gonna add about another cup of flour to that. And let's mix again. And so now we're going to switch from the paddle to the dough hook. And the dough hook just makes it so the machine does most of the kneading for us, so we don't need to knead by hand. But you could totally do this by hand, just using a spoon to like mix it in and then get it on your counter and knead it by hand the old-fashioned way. Totally fine. So I'm gonna add most of the rest of my flour. I'm just gonna save about 1/2 cup because I might not need all of it. Usually I'm between about 4 and 4.5 cups. You wanna use the least amount of flour that you can for the softest dough. But if it's still really sticking to the sides of the bowl by the time you've kneaded it for about 5 minutes, go ahead and add that extra 1/2 cup of flour and finish kneading it off, and it'll be delicious and just fine. So we're just going to do this on low speed until they combine, and then I'll move it up to, if you have a KitchenAid mixer, it's like a 2 or between a 2 and a 4. It's still a pretty low, kind of slow kneading speed. You don't want to go high and like go crazy beating the dough. Okay, so you can see that the dough is not sticking to the sides of the bowl. It's actually pretty much cleared the sides of the bowl, but it's pretty sticky around the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more flour to mine. Okay, and we'll knead that in. And different factors like the weather, the humidity, how you measure your flour, or a little bit more or less water, can all factor into how much flour you need when you're making a dough like this. So that's why I give you like a little bit of a range from 4 to 4.5 cups. Also, this is bread flour, and I really like using bread flour when I'm making baked goods. It has more protein in it, which gives you a chewier texture to your cinnamon roll. So I really recommend it and love it. I also use it for pizza. But if all you have is all-purpose flour, totally fine. Go ahead and make these with all-purpose flour. They'll still be delicious. Okay, so you can see adding that little bit of extra flour really did the trick, and I don't have very much sticking to the bottom of my bowl anymore. So now I'm just going to scrape this off the dough hook, and it's going to be a pretty sticky dough, but you should still be able to handle it. And I've got this other clean bowl that I've just added a little oil to the bottom, and I'm just going to transfer my dough from here into this other bowl, and we're going to let it rise for about an hour in a warm spot until it's doubled in size. Okay, and I'm just going to, see, I can touch it and it's not like sticking to my hands too badly. If you hold it for a while, it'll stick, but it's just mostly a little bit tacky, not too sticky. I'm just going to grab it and toss it over so that it's coated on all sides with that oil. And that will help it rise and not stick to the bowl quite as much when you dump it out later. Okay, so now I'm just going to cover this with some plastic wrap, or you could just use a clean kitchen towel. And I'm going to set this in a warm spot, like in a windowsill where the sun is, or at the back of my counter by my oven, or under some under counter lighting. Just a nice warm place. And if it's warm in your house, it should rise in an hour. It will double in size. Okay, so we're going to make our filling really quickly before we roll out our rolls. And this is super easy to do. We're going to start out with 1 cup of light brown sugar. I'm going to add that to a bowl with 1/4 cup of granulated sugar and 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And I'll leave a link below to the recipe so that you can print it out and follow along. Okay, and then the last part of the filling is some cinnamon, of course. And I use 1.5 tablespoons of cinnamon in my cinnamon roll filling. If you like even more cinnamon in your cinnamon rolls, go ahead and add more. But 1.5 tablespoons is perfect for me. Okay, and then we're just going to mix all of that together. And that way we distribute everything evenly. I've done them before where you just sprinkle it all individually on top, and I feel like it doesn't get as even of coverage. When you mix them all separately in a bowl, I know it's another bowl to dirty, which I usually try to avoid, but it makes sure you get even coverage of all of your filling ingredients. And just break up any pieces of brown sugar that are a little bit harder that don't want to break up. Okay, we're gonna set this to the side and roll out our cinnamon roll dough. All right, so we've got our roll dough and it has doubled in size. You can see it's nice and big and it's filled our bowl. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to sprinkle some flour onto a clean surface to roll out our cinnamon rolls. That will help it so that they don't stick to the counter. And this is just a really nice, soft, enriched dough. I'll sprinkle a little more on top, and then I'm gonna get some on my hands because it keeps my hands from sticking to the soft dough. And I usually just start by pressing it out rather than rolling it out right away. Get it pressed out a little bit more flour on your rolling pin so things don't stick. And we're gonna roll this out into a square, and it should be about 14 inches by 18 inches. And you can totally get a ruler out if you want to, or just eyeball it. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to add some butter. And you could use melted butter, but I think it's easiest to use really soft butter. And the reason is when you start rolling up your dough, the melted butter often tends to squeeze out, and just softened butter I think works a little bit better. It needs to be really nice and soft. If it's not really soft, it's not going to spread very well on your dough. But you can also get in there with your fingers and just spread it around with your fingers as long as your hands are clean. Okay, now that we've got our softened butter spread over the dough, we're going to sprinkle all of this filling, and I know it's going to seem like a lot. We're gonna sprinkle all of it evenly over the dough, and then we'll roll these up. So you can just kind of pat that in a little bit to kind of hold it in place. Now, this is the fun part. This is when we get to roll them up and cut them. So we're gonna start from the long side, not the short side. And we're going to roll it all the way up. I think I'll start from this side and work this way because I left myself a little bit more of a border so we don't spill out quite as much on the end. Folding it over a little bit, working your way all the way up so you get nice tight swirls because you don't want your cinnamon rolls to fall apart while you're rolling them and cutting them and then moving them over to your pan. And then once it starts to go, it's pretty easy to just roll it up. Okay, and then I like to kind of pinch my ends together a little bit to try to seal the cinnamon rolls so they don't come apart. All right, there we go. Okay, and then for cutting cinnamon rolls, some people like to use a sharp knife, which you totally can do. My favorite trick is to use a piece of clean string or unflavored dental floss. So you don't want to use like minty dental floss, but plain dental floss is my favorite thing. And I'm going to slide it right underneath the cinnamon roll log, and right in the middle, I'm going to cross it and then pull it to cut clean slices. And I usually do the middle first, and then I go halfway through each quarter. And if you just get it right on your counter, it'll slide right up. And then once I've got it in quarters, I'm going to do 3 from each of these. So I end up with 12 perfect and evenly sized cinnamon rolls. Okay, and then you can absolutely bake your cinnamon rolls in a 9x13 pan, which is what a lot of people do. And then they like grow, like they rise together and puff up and they're all like connected. I actually really like independent cinnamon rolls. So I like to do mine in a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. It's totally up to you. The same recipe works no matter which way you decide to bake them. But we're going to move the cinnamon rolls over. Try not to lose too much of your filling when you transfer them. If you hold them vertically and just move them over quickly, it'll work pretty well. Okay, and you'll lose a little bit of your filling. That's totally normal. It's fine to sprinkle some on top if you want to, or just get rid of it. There's plenty of cinnamon and sugar in these. Okay, now I'm just going to cover these with some plastic wrap, and we're going to let them rise in a warm place for about 30 to 45 minutes until they're nice and puffy before we bake them. All right, so now we're going to make the best cinnamon roll frosting. So the reason this is the best cinnamon roll frosting is because it has cream cheese in it, but it's not like an in-your-face, over-the-top cream cheese frosting, which is just, I don't like that too much on my cinnamon rolls. I just like a little bit. So we've got half a cup of salted butter and just 2 ounces of softened cream cheese. You could do this without any cream cheese at all, and it would still be super delicious. If you love cream cheese and want more of that tangy flavor, you can add more cream cheese. For me, this is the perfect balance and kind of what sets these apart. So we're going to use a handheld mixer and just mix these until it's smooth. Okay, now I'm going to add 4 to 4.5 cups of powdered sugar and mix that in. You could add raisins. Some people do that, right? That's a thing. Never in our house. We don't like cinnamon rolls with raisins here personally, but if you do, tell me in the comments below. Maybe defend your reasoning. Okay, now I'm slowly going to mix this together. I probably should have used a little bit bigger bowl, but it will go down a little bit in just a second. I just might make a mess. Okay, and once it's combined like that, we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And I've got 4 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. You could use milk if you prefer, but cream gives the richest, best flavor to this icing. Okay, then grab a spatula and just make sure to scrape down the sides and bottom of the bowl. Sometimes the butter likes to stick around the sides or the bottom, and if you scrape it, you'll get some streaks, and you want to make sure this is all evenly mixed together until it's nice and smooth. All right, we've got our cinnamon rolls and they're out of the oven, and you can see that they're nice and browned around like the top edges, but they're still like soft. You don't want to over bake these or they'll be dry. So just bake them until they're done. So they're not too gooey inside, but they're still a little gooey because everybody likes gooey cinnamon rolls. And we're going to let these sit for about 3 to 5 minutes before we add our frosting. All right, so these have been cooling for about 5 minutes. They're still super hot, which is great because we do want our cinnamon roll frosting to melt down into them just a little bit. That adds to the gooey factor, but it shouldn't totally completely melt. So we're just gonna spread a generous amount on top and just kind of let it sit there. And it's going to start melting down the sides. And if you need to spread it out, then you go ahead and spread it out in a second. You can see the frosting is going right there. It's gonna go off the side. If that starts happening, just swirl it around a little bit because they're still super hot, and that's totally fine. And your frosting, there's plenty of frosting here, so it's going to melt down onto the sides of the pan, and that's completely normal. All right, so our cinnamon rolls are covered in this barely cream cheese frosting, and they are still hot and gooey, and this is the time to eat them. And I'm going to be a total monster, and everybody knows the best part of the cinnamon roll is the middle. Okay, so this is the center of the cinnamon roll. It's the best part. I'm sorry, but Cinnabon has nothing on these cinnamon rolls. They're so good. The cinnamon is perfectly balanced with the brown sugar filling. They're gooey. The frosting, which is a hint of cream cheese, is perfect. We love these so much. I think your family will love these too. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys love these cinnamon rolls as much as we do. Be sure to let me know in the comments below what your favorite breakfast food is that you want to see me make next, and like and subscribe to my channel.